The first step to getting a new striker this summer is to move the striker on that we've already got, and that's Darwin Nunez. And the current situation is that the one of the only clubs apparently interested in him, realistically, is Napoli. I love Napoli as a city. I think it's a great place, and I think personally, Darwin would probably suit Serie A a little better than he would suit the Premier League. I'm sure, again, if we're comparing Victor Osimhen, who apparently they want to come the other way, not the option I think that we're going to go for, but apparently the option they want to go the other way, then Darwin's peak season in the Premier League was actually pretty comparable to some of the stats that Osimhen was banging in back in his peak season during the time when he was winning leagues and doing those kind of things. And of course, the Galatasaray experience won't have done any harm. But Darwin is one of those players that will have to go before we can spend some cash, and we will need one other to leave if we're going to get someone who is an all-timer, like someone who's going to be a peak Liverpool player when they initially come in. And I can't stress this enough here. A few years ago, we were talking about projects. A few years ago, we were talking about growing players out and all those kind of things. Liverpool, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of humble roots to what Liverpool are doing. And I think very often we can get a little obsessed with the sidetrack of being that humble club, the club who build people up. We do that. We've done that. And we now have some of the fruits of those labours to enjoy. At times last summer, it was, not spending money then, or, not spending money in January, or, but building Darwin Nunez to then be able to sell him, or building Virgil van Dijk, building Salah, making those guys even more valuable than they already were through the institution that we have built. All of that is big. And people will hark back to Shankly and all those kind of things. And very often we talk about Paisley, right? Paisley, whilst he might have obviously rebuilt the team, and there are a lot of things that Paisley had to deal with in his time at Liverpool. He was probably the greatest ever Liverpool manager alongside Shankly, right? I know there are other names in there, guys. I know who else we can talk about in terms of, maybe Doug Leash got us players, but that's not the point. When Liverpool were great, we weren't talking about building. We were talking about domination. We were talking about confidence. We were talking about what now we would talk about as that Scouse mentality, that all dominating, all conquering, fearless Liverpool side that your granddad, maybe your dad, probably your granddad at this phase, talks about, right? Or maybe even that probably got there. I know there are a few older guys in the comments. Now we're in that phase, and I think people aren't talking about us like that right now, but they will be at some point soon. And I think Edwards and Hughes have probably changed our stride a little bit as a club more recently. Klopp was always very much part of the humble group, part of that, we're Liverpool, we're not quite City. And it's easy to be humble when you're around sheikhs and princes and kings and funds, right? Not that our funder isn't funded well. But now I think Liverpool are changing. And I think we are going for the neck. We are a more ruthless side. And that means getting rid of Darwin. It means not accepting just whatever is on an offer, but going out there and getting the head that you want, headhunting players, rather than sometimes, going for the option that's on the table, tempting people with the institute that you're building, the title that you're trying to win, and going for the now. Slot went for the now. Salah, Van Dijk, everyone else who re-signed and stayed went for the now. They have to go for the now. I don't think they had many other options, but they have to go for the now. And that is why we need to sell Darwin Nunez. I know there are people who are pulling for him. I know there are people going, my little project, all this kind of thing. We don't have time for that right now, guys. And to an extent, I think our sentimentality should be spared for players who've, frankly, earned the sentimentality. I'm not saying I'm ungrateful for what Darwin Nunez has done to the club or for the club, but I'm not sentimental over Darwin. I'm sentimental over Andy Robertson. I was sentimental over Trent. That's why that hurt. I'm sentimental over Verge and Alisson and Salah, and to an extent now, growing Gravenberch and that midfield combination with McAllister and the energy of Szoboszlai and bringing in a new striker. And I'll be sentimental over Wirtz if he comes and does special things or says the right things or does the right things or has that combination. I'm sentimental over all that, but I'm not sentimental over Nunez. I'm not sentimental over people whose body language changes based on fair weather ideas of whether they're good or bad players and whether they are mentally strong enough to carry the load of the club. That's big for me. That's like, I get it. It sounds high-minded. But I think as fans, we should be dreamers. We should be the people who push. And we shouldn't just be sitting there going, well, go on then, what are you going to do? How should we act? And that's why Liverpool fans booed towards the end of last season when they were disappointed with Trent. It's us setting the tone. It's us showing our sentiment towards those people. And the same should go for Darwin. And the shame, if Diaz wants to go, brilliant. You've been great for the club, but this has been good. You can move on now. If you don't want to be here, all good, mate. You move on. I'll drive you to the airport. I'll pay for the cab if you want to go in a cab. I'll pay for the chauffeur-driven whatever. That's the point with these guys. I don't have time now for guys who are looking to progress their career elsewhere, for people who are clearly wanting to leave and who Liverpool want to leave. And I think he'd be a great striker for a Conte team. Conte needs passionate, young, mouldable minds. We need leaders. We need men. And I know Nunez is a lovely guy. Man, he's a great character and all those kind of things. But I think there will be some things that come out in the notebook when he leaves. And I think as passionate as we can be about him and have appreciated his moments of brilliance, there is another guy who will be more consistent. There is another guy who will very quickly probably steal our hearts. And there's probably someone else out there who I think will be audacious and brilliant. That's what a striker's job is. To steal our hearts, to lead us, to be that guy. So I'm not going to reward strikers for coming in and doing the basics. And that's why I'm willing to let him go. I think we should... The problem is with Napoli, if he was to go there, I think this is probably the beginning of negotiations. We'd probably get a little less. Napoli aren't exactly the money club that we probably wanted him to go to in Saudi or anywhere else. And that's disappointing. But if we manage those funds, if, say, we move him on, we move Diaz on, we can get a little bit more from Barca. Why are we negotiating only with the clubs who have virtually no to little cash right now? I guess because those are the ones who are coming to us for value, right? I wouldn't take Osimhen the other way, because I don't need an option striker, I need the striker. And unless we're kind of at, the last chance saloon, I'm not taking someone else's option. I want our option. I want our guy. I'd rather get a 30 to 50 million pound striker that isn't Darwin Nunez, that does the things we need our striker to do in the hold-up play, the hook-up play, bringing the other guys into play, not having his head down, being able to finish the simple chances that we put on his plate, all those kind of things. That's what I'm looking for. I know this all sounds a little bit harsh, but I'm ready for Darwin to go. And frankly, I'd be ready for Diaz to go as well if he really wants to leave. I don't have that much sentimentality around players who don't want to be at the club. And I think you should. I'd love to know what you guys think. Yes, at their audacious, chaotic peak, Osimhen and Nunez were similar. But I'm not here for that. I'm here for the control now that Arne Slot wants. I'm here for the evolution of our tactic. I think bringing in Gio van Bronckhorst is a move towards the kind of Pep Guardiola-esque level of control of football with a bit of the modern twist and the turns, those kind of things. And I think that requires quite a different striker. Some of you are going to go, well, Samuel Eto'o was part of that. Yeah, so was Ibra. Two very unpredictable but audacious strikers. But I don't think Osimhen or Nunez are those. Two guys you could argue kind of have like there's a bit of an equivalency in terms of confidence and ego, right? But that's not for me. Let me know what you guys think is the top option in the comments below. You know who I'm alluding to. You know who I want. And I'll chat to you guys later in the Patreon, in the Discord, and of course in the Super Chat. I'll see you guys in a while. Much love. Bye.